And news just coming in from the line of actual control where Indian positions have reported that several Chinese soldiers have been taken on stretchers in the past several days. This is information that is just coming in. These are high altitude peaks where the temperature has already dropped to below zero. The wind chill factor makes it even more difficult to sustain yourself at those altitudes on the north bank of Pangong. So the lake itself is at 15,000 feet. Troops are deployed at altitudes between 17 and 18,000 feet plus. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's editor Shiv Arur for more on the story. Shiv, you're breaking this big story on India Today. What are your sources telling you about what's happening at the line of actual control, especially across the LAC?
Well, Gaurav, for starters, the winter is no longer arriving. It's already arrived this week. The Pangong Lake has begun to freeze over pretty solidly, and the temperatures have plummeted to as much as minus 14 degrees at some of those heights. And yes, one of the things that the Indian positions that were taken in the last couple of weeks as part of Operation Snow Leopard, which you reported first, Gaurav, have begun to witness in the last 4 days at least, combat medics on the Chinese side, have at least on a few occasions taken PLA troops to lower altitudes as a result of high altitude pulmonary edemas, probably maybe frostbite. It isn't clear what the ailments are, but clearly the weather has begun to take a toll. There have been some casualties on the Chinese side owing to the weather. And one must never, believe that this cannot happen on the Indian side, except that Indian forces have had larger experience at higher altitudes. So it's not something, to cock a snook at, but there appear to be some casualties. Stretchers have been noticed in those areas, and combat medics have been witnessed on the Chinese side taking some of these afflicted soldiers to lower altitudes. There apparently is a Chinese field hospital between Finger 5 and Finger 6 of Pangong as well. This is the arrival of the winter. This was something that was to be expected, and I fear that, there will be casualties perhaps on both sides, though I must say that the Indian forces have experience of being deployed round the year, including in very harsh winter conditions in far higher altitudes, as you know, Gaurav, including on the Saltoro Ridge and the Siachen Glacier. So the Indian forces perhaps are better prepared for this weather, but this is the bitter reality of these high altitudes and battlecraft in this terrain.
Shiv, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more. So general winter remains the biggest enemy, and perhaps realization will dawn on the Chinese. Have they bitten more than they can chew? Let me also bring into this conversation Lieutenant General PGS Pannu. He's former Fire and Fury Corps commander. He knows the lay of this land extensively. General Pannu, your appreciation of the current situation. Winters have already set in this part of Ladakh, and of course when you talk about Pangong, so Depsang, DBO, much colder there. Have the Chinese bitten more than they can chew, sir?
Thank you, Gaurav. According to how I understand and our troops are, I think relatively it is a very pleasant weather for the Indian troops. Our Indian troops are quite familiar with the terrain, the lower oxygen conditions there, super low temperatures. We train our soldiers to fight at minus 40 degrees. They are not only equipped, they are acclimatized naturally. While the Chinese are put through a quick process of chamber acclimatization, they are into pressurized chambers. They are heavily dependent on oxygen. They only live in barracks. They don't have any experience of living in bunkers. They wear warm clothing and only go from warm vehicle to warm buildings. To get them into this kind of exposure, I think these single young children who've been pushed by a political party to fight their agenda on these heights that Indian troops literally live on.
Okay.
I think it is not that they have bitten more than they can bite, but I think they are simply on the wrong side of the land, which does not belong to them. They are going to be faced with hostile weather and very hostile Indian troops.
Very interesting. Hostile weather and a very hostile Indian army because they've transgressed the line of actual control. There's more breaking news that's coming in, and that's a big story that we're breaking first here on India First. It's now clear that the Corps Commander level dialogue will take place in the next 48 to 72 hours. There was a high-level meeting in Delhi today. This was a meeting which was attended by the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Some reports seem to indicate that the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, was also a part of this meeting. And India's agenda for the Corps Commanders discussion was discussed in this meeting. India is very clear that simultaneous disengagement needs to take place across the line of actual control. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's editor defense, Abhishek Bhalla, joining me with the latest on the story. So Abhishek, what's India's agenda? Simultaneous disengagement and de-escalation across LAC. Bring us details of what was discussed.
Gaurav, there was a meeting of the security brass in New Delhi today, and what has been discussed is that the strategy over the next 2-3 days in preparations for the Corps Commander level talks, because remember, till now 5 talks have taken place at that level. But in the last 20 days, things have changed drastically at the line of actual control, with India occupying some very crucial heights, both south as well as north of the Pangong Lake. And that's why the focus is now on how to negotiate with the Chinese. This is what I'm hearing. There is also talk of a changed delegation from the Indian side, who all will be part of this. This too has to be discussed with the Chinese side. In all, the future strategy has been discussed, the roadmap to ensure that negotiations remain even this time, not like what happened in the last 5 talks where the Chinese were calling the shots, because they were the ones who were sitting in some areas which was completely under Indian control. For the first time in the last 4.5 months, there is a situation where the Indian army is perhaps calling the shots in some of the friction areas.
Very interesting. Let me also bring into this conversation Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar. He reads the Chinese mind. And Ambassador, when we talk about the Chinese, even when there was a dialogue at the level of the Corps Commanders, the Chinese were trying to transgress into our territory. So when the next round of Corps Commander talks happen, maybe in 24, 48 or 72 hours, can we trust the Chinese, or should we beware? They could be trying to infiltrate or consolidate in other areas.
You know, what we've seen, Gaurav, so far is that the strategy that the Chinese employ is talk and take. You know, while they are talking, we are speaking to them in good faith. We are having this dialogue, trying to see how we can reduce the tension, disengage, de-escalate, etc. The Chinese troops have been busy taking a fresh territory putting it under their control. So I think we have become wise to their machinations, to their stratagems, to the way that they behave. So, you use the word trust. I think it's not only in these conversations, but I think for a long time to come, this word trust is not going to enter our minds when we are talking about the Chinese. So I think we are going to be as for the last...
Very interesting. Let me also bring in General Panu. Yes, General Panu, let's take this step by step. If we talk about simultaneous disengagement and de-escalation, does that mean that if the Chinese move back from finger 4 to finger 8 or other flashpoints, we also let go of those strategic heights at Gurung Hill, Magar Hill, Richinla, Rizangla? In that case, don't the Chinese gain more?
Gaurav, I think there is a lot of difference in what they have done and how Indian troops have gone and occupied those areas. From the dynamics of talking, that is the Corps Commanders talk, and also at the on the sidelines of the Shanghai cooperation, meetings that have happened. You see, we have been talking peace, but Chinese have been preparing for war. It is the job of the military to prepare for war. I do not put any credence to anything that will come out of these talks. These talks are only a sham because these talks are a shadow behind which the PLA is continuously moving. In fact, they're building barracks there. Now, to expect that who will move first and how it will be done, well, I think that is more of a theoretical exercise, but we can engage in it. Anybody who took initiative and has come into certain areas initially has the responsibility to demonstrate peace. It is not talk peace, demonstrate peace. And they don't have to only vacate these areas, but they have to go that much back so that we understand that they are not going to come back again. As far as the Indian troops are concerned, Indian troops have not transgressed across the line of actual control. It is the Chinese who have transgressed across the line of
That's
actual
a very
control.
interesting point you make.
It is their onus to
Absolutely.
get back.
The Chinese not only have to disengage, de-escalate, but also de-induct from the battle zone. That's a very important point you make, which means these two motorized and mechanized divisions need to get back to their peacetime locations. The Indian Air Force, as the General and the Ambassador very rightly pointed out, do not trust the armed forces. In the Air Force, they say the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. Indian Air Force has been flying combat air patrols locked and loaded, fully locked and loaded with their weapons, missiles, all of that on board. India Today's Sandeep Unnithan and I bring you this report.
With a roar, a beast returns to base. An Indian Air Force MiG-29 fighter jet arriving back at the Leh Air Base after a mission over Ladakh. The roar of its twin engines, now a signature sound in this stretch of the Himalayas. And here's a Mirage 2000 in a low pass over the Leh airfield before climbing out for its next mission. On the ground, a pair of formidably armed Apache helicopters lifts off. They have their own prowling to do in airspace close to the standoff zone. As winter arrives and Indian Army troops consolidate their positions at dominant heights across the standoff zone, the Indian Air Force is in top gear for both offensive and defensive air operations. Military preparedness in Ladakh has been high for nearly 5 months now. But since the end of August, the tempo of missions has hit a record high. As you can see from these images, the Indian Armed Forces aren't waiting for China to make a move. They're fully prepared for any eventuality. But China's stubborn refusal to confirm dates for an agreed round of military talks has spurred suspense and added to uncertainties in eastern Ladakh. If you're wondering about the recently inducted Indian Air Force Rafale fighters, India Today can confirm to you that the jets have been flying periodic missions over Ladakh. The Indian Air Force chief had dropped a major hint about the aircraft's readiness at the induction ceremony in Ambala recently.
They have already flown and familiarized with our operational environment and have undergone intense integrated training with our other combat fleets, including firing of advanced weapons. And I expect the golden arrows to intimidate and dominate whenever and wherever employed.
In a scenario unique to the Indian Air Force and representative of its arsenal, air power in Ladakh stands represented by both one of the oldest fighter types in service, the MiG-21, and the newest, the Rafale. Super high altitude, super cold weather, no deterrent to the tempo of air operations.
A clear day over Leh today, but war clouds looming large in Ladakh. Mirage 2000 fighter jets, MiG-29 air superiority fighters and Su-30s have been carrying out a number of sorties. The army is extensively deployed and increasing numbers along the line of actual control to keep an eye on an extremely belligerent and untrustworthy China. Coupled with this is the fact that China appears reluctant to return to the dialogue table. What is the dragon planning? Is there more deceit in store? With Sandeep Unnithan and cameraman Kripal Singh in Leh, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. Ambassador Sajjanhar, in your appreciation, the fact that Indian Air Force is displaying its air power, the fact that the country is talking from a position of strength, will this impact China, or the fact that they've brought a mechanized and a motorized division, they intend to change the status quo at the LAC permanently? Is war then on the cards?
Well, I will not say that war is on the cards, because I don't think, India definitely does not want war. And I feel that China also doesn't want war, because China has so far, we are all aware that the last war that China fought was in 1979. And there also they got a bloody nose from a much smaller country and a much smaller force. So they have not had any experience, but what they've been able to do, they have been able to use the teachings and philosophy of Sun Tzu by dominating and by vanquishing their adversaries and their enemies without firing a single bullet. And that is what they have been trying right from the word go. That has been their intention, that they should be able to get the better of India without firing a single bullet. And I think they've been taken by surprise. They were taken by surprise in Galwan. They were taken by surprise on what happened on the 29th and 30th of August. And also what happened on the 7th of September, because we were also able to return their fire in the air when they fired at our people. So they also do not want war. I think what the best case scenario, if I may mention this, Gaurav, is that they want a disengagement only at the, where there is a standoff, where there is a face-off, eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation, so that the forces on the two sides can retreat a little, so that there is no accidental movement into war. But otherwise, I think the Chinese have changed the facts on the ground. They have created a new narrative. I think they have been preparing for this for a long time. And I do not think that they will be in any hurry to vacate that land. So I think we have to be mindful of that when we go in. But
Abhishek, you've been speaking to your sources in the army, Abhishek, and the Indian army, the Indian army will not let the Chinese get very comfortable in this area. And General Pannu, if I may put that question to you, the Indian army does not intend to let the Chinese get very comfortable along the LAC now.
Gaurav, it is not about letting them become comfortable or not comfortable. They are not going to be comfortable. It is their own choosing that they have come here. They came here with a different expectation altogether. If they are surprised, they have to know whether they are enjoying the surprise or not. Now that the stretchers are going back, the oxygen is only keeping them alive. It is the chambers which are keeping them acclimatized. They have to run to the barracks every time to take some oxygen and come up. Once they go down, they make excuses not to fight. The doctors are going to push up to tell them to look, you are fit to go back. There is a problem, and this problem has been known even earlier when the face-offs were there. They would come there, and they always came in areas where they could bring the vehicles, and all of these vehicles are very comfortable. They could not leave the vehicles for more than 3 to 4 hours. And they were in a hurry to achieve their objective, argue and do banner drill and very quickly get back to the barracks. Look at the kind of barracks that they have made. Even now in Spangur Gap, they are trying to build 5-star hotel equivalent.
Which means, General, let's specifically talk about, so Spangur Gap. No, I want to talk about Depsang, for example. Depsang, they can come into vehicles. They would want to remain there. In Pangong, so if they are in a very difficult situation, they would want ceasefire or moving back in that area, and India needs to press home this advantage that they move back in Depsang if we need to move back elsewhere, General?
They have to move out from everywhere. Unless they're given a barrack, they will not be able to sustain themselves. They have built beautiful posts. The forwardmost posts are built in a manner that it affords them luxury of a town. They are not used to living in field areas and in combat situations. Indian Army always have lived in such areas and in combat situations. If the PLA wants to do this exercise, they're most welcome to do. Unless they want to convert this into a peace exercise or a peacekeeping exercise, it is entirely up to them. But I think it is their choice if they want to sit on top of Finger 4 heights and feel the breeze, which is only going to dip into more minus degrees, headed to minus 40 in next coming few months, and the wind chill factor is going to increase to a point. I do not know how they are going to build such beautiful barracks on these heights and fight from their beds. I really wonder if some soldiers are going to do it, they are going to do it at a great cost of loss of life, limb, and health forever. I don't think so the parents are going to permit the children to suffer this. There is going to be certainly a problem back home at the highest levels. There is going to be a problem in the PLA because they're pushing the political agenda through these young children who've been forcefully recruited by the political party and sent out on these hilltops to fight against the mighty Indian Army.
Okay, so Ambassador Sajjanhar, for peace then, if China is looking for a face saver, does that face saver then only happen through a summit level dialogue? It hasn't happened so far at the level of the External Affairs Minister, Defense Minister, National Security Advisor. Clearly can't happen at the level of the core commanders.
I do not think, I would not like to put it that way, that China is looking for a face saver because, Chinese think that they are in a very strong position and they are not really being serious because you would see that right from the 10th of September, when the two foreign ministers met in Moscow, since that time they have been saying that it is India that has violated its commitments and it has moved on the other side of LAC. So we have nothing to do. It's only the Indian side which has to move back. So, they are not serious. They are not going to move back. They are not looking for a face saver. I don't think we should try to delude ourselves by saying that, we really have them with their back to the wall. We have certain advantages. I agree with you. We have certain and very significant advantages on the south bank of Pangong. So, but I think we need to we need to apply pressure, not only at the border. I think border, we can say that we are more or less even, but I think we need to apply pressure, the economic pressure, the pressure through our partnerships in
That's very interesting that you say we need to apply diplomatic pressure, economic pressure. Some of that seems to be happening even in the United States of America, who've banned they've banned TikTok and WeChat. Let's see how this pressure builds in the days and weeks to come. Ambassador Sajjanhar and General Pannu, many thanks for joining me. That is all I have time for on India First this evening. From Ladakh, many thanks for watching.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.